Good evening. Um, Again, it's a great day to be in the presence of the Lord. I thank all of you again for tuning in. Thank God for grace. Thank God for mercy. And thank God for his loving kindness that he truly has shared upon all of us. I want to do something different today, um, other than a particular, the traditional way of a sermon for Sunday morning. And I want to take this opportunity to talk a little about mental health and the church, particularly the African American church. And those who are members of Zion Baptist know that I am an advocate for mental health. I try my best to support mental health. I have done um, some some speeches on mental health from my perspective as a pastor and law enforcement, because in both fields I deal with mental health quite a bit, probably so much so in law enforcement than I do in pastoral care. But mental health is something that's dear to me for different reasons, and particularly for the church, the African American church, because in the African American church, um, mental health is is downplayed, and there is pretty much a stigma on mental health. And I'll give you a prime example. If someone stands in front of the church and asks for prayer because they have been diagnosed with cancer or any other physical illness, the church is quick to pray for them. The church is quick to rally around them if there's surgery needed. Um, the church will pull together, and not just the church, but also from that within that community, that people will come together to make sure that the family is okay as far as food, as far as transportation for anyone. But if that same person stood up and shared with the church that they were depressed, a totally different response. The person who stands up and says they're depressed, the community or the church responds by saying things like, "Get over it. Where is your faith? Um, that's just the devil talking to you." And so, with those comments, the church, we have people who suffer in mental illness, depression, anxiety, so forth and so on, and who are afraid to come forward and ask for prayer because they're going to be looked at as a person who does not have faith but does not believe in God. I shared with a person one time who was, in their own way, in their language, they were, from what I understood them saying, is that they believe that mental health, depression, anxiety, stress were all things from the enemy, and that we could just pray those things off, blah blah blah. And my response to them was, how long throughout the day can you make it without your eyeglasses? And the person looked at me, and I explained to them, I said, telling someone to just pray it off. So what if someone told you to just pray your eyesight to come back? Or that the reason you wore glasses is because you didn't have faith in God, so forth and so on. I think I made my point to the person, um, how they should view or be a little more, have a little more sympathy or even empathy for a person with mental health. It's so crucial because we have people in our community who are afraid to get help because they are afraid of how they will be perceived if they tell someone they suffer with mental illness. Mental illness is perceived as a person being weak, not able to handle some of the things that life throws at them. And we have this cliche in the church. I still have not found in Scripture. Please, you can respond back somehow if it is Scripture. I just never found it. It says that the Lord won't put no more on you than you can bear. There's even a song that says that the Lord only give us so much as to whatever we can handle before the Lord eases the pressure. You just think about that for a while, and if you can find it in Scripture, please let me know. I'm not the type of person who is going to turn you away or tell you what you found is wrong. I'm always willing and open to learn. But we have to be careful, because even if the Lord does not give us no more than we can handle, that does not mean that life itself won't give us situations that come that we can't handle. I say all of that to say, it's interesting to me how the church downplays mental health and mental illness when the Bible is covered with men and women, godly men and women, who suffered mental illness. It's a reason why Jeremiah picked up the nickname the Weeping Prophet. I had the opportunity to study Jeremiah in depth last year in school. And one of the things I respected about Jeremiah is his honesty with God. So several times he told God he wished he was never born. If that's not depression, I don't know what is. He couldn't be married, didn't have a family. Jeremiah was poor. All of these things, all of these stressors were on him as an individual. He's a prophet, but he's still human. And he even asked God, he said, at one point he said, cursed be the man that told my father, upon you, you bear a son. Again, he's pretty much saying, I wish I was never born. Everybody knows Job's story. There was a time when Job was depressed. I did a series last year on the book of Jonah. And Zion, if you remember, we looked at the ups and downs of the life of Jonah. Jonah at times was depressed. He didn't want to go to Nineveh. He himself also said he wished he'd rather die. And please understand that those were not just words that they were speaking. Those were true feelings that they had on the inside. I was reading a blog by a man by the name of Paul Nathan. And Paul Nathan wrote a blog about David, the depressed king, King David, 1st and 2nd Samuel. If you read it, and Paul Nathan argues that the majority of David's kingship, he's depressed. Gave me some different insight as far as the historical context of the text. In particular, I think one of the most famous stories of David is when he was dancing and leaping with joy when the Ark of the Covenant was brought back to his house, and his wife was disgusted with him because he was disrobing himself as a king. And we preach that sermon all the time. We're going to dance like David. But Paul Nathan, in his blog, the historical context behind him dancing is at that time that dancing was a way to relieve stress. He goes on with some other things he talks about in the life of David. If you're a Bible reader, if you are familiar with David, you know that his father-in-law Saul tried to kill him, if I'm correct, right off the top of my head, I think 5 or 6 times. His own father-in-law was trying to kill him before he became the king. If that won't send you to a place of depression, I don't know what will. when you know that somebody wants you dead. That's a sermon all by itself. But yet he kept going. Church, the point I'm trying to make to you is God did not create us to not need him. Mental health, mental illness, all of the examples of the people, characters in the Bible that I've shared with you, all of them suffered some type of depression, anxiety. But they told God, they were open enough, they had a relationship with God, that they were able to explain to God and tell God exactly how they felt. As we talk about mental illness, please understand that at some point in your walk with God, you have to be honest with God. I was speaking to a person a few days ago, and they shared with me that in their prayer life that they were just quick to tell God exactly what they wanted and what they needed in prayer, as far as going to name specific names of the people who had hurt them or the people who despised them. And I want to encourage you today that your relationship with God has to be so personal that you're able to share everything with God. If you can't talk to God, who else can you talk to? He already knows your thoughts. He already knows what you're thinking even before you can think it. So why not be open with him and share with him? People laugh when I say this, but I am a firm and confident believer that the only reason I'm still here, the only reason I'm still alive, the only reason God has allowed my ministry to go to where it is and to go even further, not because I'm perfect, but because I have an open relationship with God. And please, I ain't talking about Will and Jada when I say an open relationship. I'm talking about a relationship with God. Lord have mercy, Zion Baptist. We was in church, we would be cracking up right now. I miss y'all so much. I had to say, we would be cracking up right now. And I know Sandra and Shirley would be laughing, and Harriet, y'all would be laughing till you turn red. But anyway, let me get back to it. A relationship with God that I'm able to tell God exactly how I feel. If I'm mad, I tell God I'm mad. If I'm upset, I tell him I'm upset. If I'm sad, I tell him I'm sad. I'm sad. If I tell God, if I don't think God is right, I tell God, God, I think you're wrong about this. But since you in charge, I'm going to do what you say do. When we become real with God, that's when God can begin the healing process with us when we're suffering with depression and anxiety. I'm not knocking medicine at all. But an old theologian by the name of Paul Tillich writes that pastoral care, a relationship with God, is needed along with medicine sometimes. That you're not discarding the medicine that the doctor prescribes. But what helps us with mental illness, mental health, is that we have a relationship with God. And I want to encourage the church, don't look down on people who are suffering with mental illness, mental health. Help them. Pray for them. Encourage them. Don't say things like get over it. Don't say things like where's your faith? Be honest with God when you're going through, and be open enough to help the person who is suffering with mental illness. Listen, only by the grace of God at this point in my life, I've never, I don't think, suffered with mental illness. But there are enough people around me who do. And I am very, very cautious, making sure I try to help them the best of my ability. Mental health is real. It is growing at a rapid pace. And the church has to do all that it can to support people who suffer with mental illness. I pray that I have said something to spark your interest, spark your attention. Go and read the book of Jeremiah. Go read Job, Jonah. If you really want to challenge yourself, you go read about Jesus when he's near death at the Garden of Gethsemane. Even on the cross, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? When Jesus himself has felt like he has been abandoned by God. Some scholars believe that he was dealing with depression right before he took his last breath on the cross. I encourage you, as always, don't just listen to me, read it for yourself. Ask God for understanding, and I believe he'll give it to you. God bless you, church. Zion Baptist, I just realized how much I missed you when I said something about Jada and Will. God bless you. See you soon.